Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network, presented by Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim, not joined by Sean Smith, not joined by Zach Gagan, but instead, Jamie Shaw. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Jack, man, I'm good. Just obviously nerves running through as you see the weather behind both of us. It's a little bit hectic here, so hopefully we'll still control the controllables is what I was told by a wise man.
Hey, that's me. I'm your wise man. So we're just wrapping up our time in Colorado Springs. What an absolute joy of a weekend it was. Just watching Mark Pope, watching Jasper Johnson, watching Malachi Moreno, and then obviously 32 of the best U19 players high school basketball has to offer, college basketball has to offer. You could argue the 32 best, U19 kids in the world. They'll probably go prove that in Switzerland for the FIBA World Cup. So just general takeaways, Jamie, your time in Colorado Springs. What'd you like? What did you not like?
Well, I think it was mostly a positive time, as you said. My main takeaway was the competitive nature of the camp. Once the ball tipped, obviously they're going through drills. They're trying to get some sets put in and all that type of stuff. But once the ball tipped and the scrimmages started, these kids were competing. It meant something to these players to wear the USA across their chest. And as they went out there, every single time it seemed that, this was one of the more competitive environments that I've seen in the high school setting. So it was awesome to be able to get an evaluation standpoint. But also to be able to see these young men go out there and really put forth the effort that they did.
Yeah, I totally agree. And obviously I'm there with a Kentucky lens, but just seeing you turn one part of the gym and it's AJ DeBanza. You look at the other side and it's Tyron Stokes, and you just go down the list. I mean, the college talent was very impressive as well. Incoming freshmen all the way down to, the 2026 standout. So there's just so much talent in the gym where you got to see, it was fun kind of talking with you after the first day, going into day two, and then transitioning to day three, where we were like, nobody was truly like the elite of the elite. This was their day, and everybody else was just fighting for second place. Everybody was really, really good, with nobody really bad, if you will. Everybody kind of did a little something where there wasn't anybody sticking out like a sore thumb of saying that guy did not belong here. Is that the feel that you got?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, everybody was able to find a role. When you're able to put 32 alphas in a court together, it's interesting to see kind of how they all respond. And I feel like, everybody responded appropriately. Everybody found their role. They found their niche, especially in these final 18 before they get down to 12. This is going to be a very hard decision to cut from this 18 to 12 because everybody did find a role. You had the defensive players, you had the scorers, you had the ball movers, you had the point guards, you had the bigs, you had the physical guys. Just everybody kind of found their niche, and everybody was playing for each other. The ball was moving, it stayed hot. People were defending, diving on the floor for loose balls, getting up, slapping fives and good hustle and getting back out to the next play. So, I wouldn't say that anybody was bad at all. I would say there were a couple guys that were kind of, at a level above people. But I think everybody deserved to be here that was here.
We're obviously bringing you on again. It's kind of just a different setup. You're in your airport. I'm in my airport. We're kind of, just making do with this situation because, I think that the fans value the insight and the intel more so than the, production quality of this one. So,
Jack, you should have seen our jaws whenever they came in with the hail that was happening outside.
Dude.
At the event today. They walked in with 5 golf ball size pieces of hail. It's like, hey guys, so this is happening right now.
Yeah, so we're just kind of making do with how best we can do it right now. But the reason why we're doing this, the reason why I wanted you to come on was obviously Malachi and Jasper. This event was about those two, with Mark Pope specifically coaching them. What did you like about what you saw from Malachi and Jasper, and what did you not like about the Kentucky incoming freshmen?
Oh, I think, again, there weren't really many negatives to take away from the entirety of the event. I thought Jasper, as the week went on, he continued to find his way in consolidating his game into being a jump shooter and a floor spacer. By the end of the day, it was apparently obvious that Jasper was one of the better just wing scorers that they had in the camp. He did it by consolidating his game. He did it by picking his spots, not really forcing anything, not really trying to do things he can't, like trying to put on the floor, self-create and do all that. He was playing everything within the flow of the offense, If it wasn't there, he would get rid of the ball, get off it, and keep moving around, coming around screens, especially when he's going from his right to his left as a left-handed player. Getting to that shot was super smooth and pretty effortless for him. His footwork was really good in that, and no matter the level. And he was also able to do turn defense into offense pretty quickly. He transitioned floors pretty quickly to get a couple leak-out buckets throughout the course to kind of get things going for him a little bit. Malachi, on the same, was one of the better bigs in the event. They had 5 centers, I believe, with the thing. And he was a top 3 center throughout the time that he was there on the court. Very big, as you well know, pushing 7 feet. But he wasn't shy of the physicality. He was able to get in there and mix it up. He finished around the basket. He protected the rim. He moved well. You can see that he's noticeably bigger, but with that bigger frame that he has, he's mobile. He's athletic. He's able to slide and turn still, and he's not stiff by any stretch of the imagination either. So he found a way. He even knocked down a 3. Still got a little hitch in his jump shot and all that type of stuff, but I think that the shooting could be something that is explored in the future as he continues to go. But he was physical around the basket. He protected the rim, and he finished plays at the front of the rim, and he was consistent with it.
So the Mark Pope dynamic was obviously a really unique one because we haven't, this is his debut. He has never been a part of USA basketball. So fans, I'm sure, are interested to know, what was it like watching him? How was he interacting with the kids, not just Malachi and Jasper, but all of the talent on the floor, all of the Kentucky targets. Obviously, fans definitely want to know about that, but just the vibe that kind of Mark Pope brought as a coach making his debut with USA basketball.
Coach Pope's always on the move. He's always talking to somebody, and he's never sitting down. He's never just analyzing a play or sitting there, whatever. If he's coaching a team, he's talking to both sides. He's even walking to the other side and talking to players on the sidelines. If he's not coaching, he's talking to somebody, whether it be an NBA scout, whether it be another coach, but more than likely it was a player that was on the court, whether it be Malachi, whether it be a Tay Kenny, or whether it be any number of other guys that were within the camp that were there, Jasper and all those. He was always floating around in between different settings and talking to somebody, and always kind of moving and kind of bringing energy and a personality wise throughout the camp.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway that I had, and the one moment that kind of really stuck out to me, and I know we talked about it in real time, was the scrimmages are going on, and everybody is, invested in the game, or, off to the side on their phones, or, whatever. They're kind of in the moment. And then you look off to the other court, and Mark Pope pulls Tay Kenny aside and is rebounding for him. What is the significance of something like that, where, you look at, the potential recruiting advantage something like this can be in this type of setting? Do you think it could lead to, big-time recruiting wins for Mark Pope on the recruiting trail?
Well, sure. And I'm going to answer that question in a little bit of a roundabout way, too, because the thing that stood out to me the most about Pope was when you were getting your interview with him and waiting there in the thing, Mark literally went around to every single person in the gym to say something to him. And he had a dialogue with them. It wasn't just a, hey, man, good job, pat on the butt type thing. He had a dialogue with every single player, whether it's, Morez Johnson at Michigan, or whether it's a recruit like a Tyron Stokes, or whether it's a Malachi, or whether it's, Tyler Tanner at Vanderbilt. Whomever it is, he had a dialogue and building a relationship with each single person in the gym. And he made it a point to go say, hey, to each single person in the gym. That kind of speaks toward what he is and what he's about when it comes to that. But also, back to your question in the circular way, it never hurts to be face-to-face with the players that you're recruiting, to see, for them to be able to get a feel for not only your personality, for you to get a feel for them and the people around them, but also with what you're about, how you coach, how you interact with your team, how you interact with your players, what you're about. Do you take me to the side and talk with me about it, console me, and help me feel comfortable? Are you hard? Are you players coach? Whatever the case may be, FaceTime always is good when you get familiarity and you're able to spend time around people in kind of an uninhibited manner like this. Obviously, he wasn't out there throwing recruiting pitches and all that type of stuff. He was out there coaching. He was out there forming relationships. He was actually out there trying to get these players better and to a spot to where the USA U19 team can go win a World Cup. And within that, he's around some of the best players in the country. It just so happens that Kentucky recruits some of the best players in the country, and they were able to get a feel for one another, whether or not him as a coach or them as a player, how it is that he coaches, and build a rapport and a trust factor. So, from a recruiting standpoint, while that wasn't the main goal as to what it was, I don't feel like what he was doing. I feel like the secondary aspect of what it is couldn't hurt.
So, in terms of recruiting, in terms of the 2026 class, 9 of the 31, it started at 33, dipped down to 31 by the time the event actually started. But at training camp, 9 of those 2026s had Kentucky offers. A lot of those top 15, top 20 level recruits. Of that group, we can go through, the guys with offers: Taj Ariza, Christian Collins, Jason Crow, Caleb Holt, Tay Kinney, Brandon McCoy Jr., Darren Rippey Jr., Jordan Smith Jr., and Tyron Stokes. Of that group, who jumped out at you the most? Who were the guys that, if you're a Kentucky fan, based on their performance in Colorado Springs, do you want Kentucky to pursue, push all their chips in on?
The best high school performer that I saw at the event was Darron Rippey. I thought he was the most consistent performer. I thought he was he was most consistently able to impact what it was he was doing on the floor. He was getting to his spots. He's super fast, possibly the most, the fastest, twitchiest guard that was there, living in the paint, playing in the pick and roll with pace and all that stuff. And he was consistently, every time you looked up, it seemed that you're seeing Darron Rippey within the play. The other guys all showed flashes. Caleb Holt had a really good day today. Brandon McCoy, who also had a really good day today. Tyron and Jordan didn't play after Sunday. They were going through treatment throughout the week, so we'll see what happens with them whenever they come out. But Taj Ariza had flashes. Christian Collins had a really good earlier time in the session. So it was whenever you get this many guys on the court at once, it's people try to find their roles. People are and these ages ranged from like a Jason Crow who's 16 to like a Moreno Johnson who's 19. And 16 to 19, when it comes to physicality, when it comes to aging and everything, there's a big difference in the physicality. There's a big difference in the mindset and all that type of stuff between 16 and 19, only 3 years. So I would say that the best high school player for me there was Darron Rippey. And he was consistently the best player each day, each session that we sat through. Darron Rippey was the best high school player that was there.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Rippey was amazing. I think I watched him in just the vision of Ashton Hagens, just if we're going to keep in the Kentucky sphere. It kind of just kept coming to me, and I think it might have been the freshman, hair that kind of jumped out at me, and it was his style of play, how he gets downhill, playing two ways, the athleticism, the burst, the explosiveness. He just kind of had that, that dog in him that Ashton did, and I kind of saw that vision watching him. But I think fans want to know Tyron Stokes. Obviously, hasn't played, didn't play the last couple of days, but does Kentucky have a chance with him? And if they were to kind of work their way in on that one, do you think he'd be worth the investment? Is he the type of talent that could truly be kind of a game-changing talent for Mark Pope in Lexington?
Well, two answers to that. I'll answer the first part of it is yes. I do think that he has, Kentucky has a chance there. I mean, obviously, with the quote that you got and the conversation that you heard that he had and everything too, Kentucky means a great deal to him. The state of Kentucky, where he's from and all that type of stuff means a great deal to him. I have a feeling that Kentucky's going to prioritize him and push it all in. Mark Pope made a point in his introductory conference to say that he wants to put a fence around the state of Kentucky and keep the best talent home. Tyron Stokes, number one player in the country. And to kind of build on that, to answer the second part of your question, he's the only person in the conversation for number one overall in the 2026 class. Despite anything that he brings, his natural talent, 6'8", the length that he has, kind of how he plays and all that stuff, he is the best player in the country in 2026. He's the most talented player in the country in 2026. And he's from the state of Kentucky. So I feel like that puts Kentucky in a unique position to be involved.
We can run through some of these other ones as well. Based on your intel, the conversations you had, I watched you having a lot of conversations, so I know you know your stuff. Going through the likes of Taja Reza, Christian Collins, Jason Crow, Caleb Holt, Tay Kenny, Brandon McCoy, Darren Rippey, Jordan Smith, Tyron Stokes. Of that group, who does Kentucky have the best shot with? And involve, I think you talked to most, if not all, of those guys. Who could we realistically, talk about as potential additions in Kentucky's 2026 recruiting class?
Well, it's an interesting question because I still think there's a long way to go within the 2026 class. Obviously, Kentucky has offers out to those players, and they're building relationships. Obviously, Jason Hart with the West Coast kids, other guys on staff with each of them throughout. I think it's going to be an interesting aspect to see which guys Kentucky pushes on. I think we're going to see once visits are set, as we saw Tay Kenny set his visit today to go to Kentucky, so obviously he's going to be a priority. I think we're going to start to see the tiers of the recruiting board come to happen by the timing of the visits. The later the visits of the player toward the earlier visits that they have with the officials, I think we'll start to see the tiers. But I think that the strong question is, who is Kentucky going to push for? Because they have relationships, they have inroads, and if they wanted to make a push for all of these players, they could probably get heavily into the mix. But I think the next steps that we're going to see when it comes to these next live periods, this classic stuff, as well as in the July Peach Jam area, is who's Kentucky prioritizing? Where does Mark Pope go on night one?
And how much of that is quantity over quality when you factor in the transfer portal and the value that you can get with experience? You're talking high school kids at this level where, their asking price, I know with the rev share, it's going to be a little bit different, but these kids are still going to be very expensive. When you factor in those things, is there, can you get the bang for your buck going the high school path? And, do you go sign 3 or 4 or 5 of these kids, or do you say, if I land Tyron Stokes, then maybe the only other guy we sign in this class is Tay Kenny or, Darren Rippey, or go fill in the blank? Is it a 1 or 2 type of situation, or do you think there's enough talent there to suggest that you do to go 3, 4, or 5?
That's an interesting question. I do think that most people kind of want to stay with the two-ish. That most of the college coaches around the landscape that I'm talking to kind of want to be around that 2 high school player thing. I'm moving down seats right now, but they most of the time want to be around the 2 players, 2 high school players within their classes. Some of them will go to 3 depending on how they feel with it. But like you said, this 2026 class is a little bit down. The immediate impact guys might not be that we've seen in years past. And then with the crazy amount of the heightened NIL values that we saw in this past cycle, kind of set expectations for what's coming this year, or could be. So most of the college coaches I've seen or I've talked to, sitting in that 2 to 3 high school player range, I wouldn't expect Kentucky to be much different. They seem to be putting a priority on still bringing in high school players and then rounding out the roster with the portal. But there's just so much unknown between now and then, kind of when it happens as to what the roster is going to look like in March and February after signing players in the early parts of November. So that doesn't really answer your question, I'm sure. But 2 to 3 is a pretty common number that I'm hearing this cycle at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. So the way we're going to do this show, we're going to start wrapping things up with Jamie. I always, appreciate what he brings to the table and his insights. He's the best in the world at what he does. And then, I'll, kind of riff a little bit and share some of my own, personal experiences from Colorado Springs. And then we'll transition out of here. I was able to talk to Grant McCaslin of Texas Tech and Micah Shrewsbury of Notre Dame about Malachi and Jasper, their thoughts coaching both of those players over the course of their entire time with USA Basketball, but this weekend in particular. So great stuff coming from there. Make sure you stick around and tune into the show and get those exclusive one-on-one interviews with those two. But Jamie, before I get you out, non-Kentucky specific parts of camp, I know your breakdowns are coming and already out there, and more to come. Just in terms of your individual standouts, the guys that were the best of the best. If you could name the five best players of camp over the course of the last 3 days that we saw in Colorado Springs, who would they be, and just a little bit of why?
AJ Levanza, for me, was the top guy. BYU, 6'9". He will be a rising freshman there. When he turned it on, he had everything. Amongst his peers, he was the alpha. He was able to get downhill. He was able to score the ball at each level with consistency. He defended. He has unbelievable frame, athleticism, pop, lateral, and verticality. Just the whole aspect of what AJ Levanza was. All eyes were on him. The players knew that he was good. The coaches knew that he was good. The onlookers, the media, the NBA scouts knew that he was good. When he turned it on, he was fantastic. The second, another player, Michael Brown, Louisville freshman, he was steadily really, really good at the point guard position. Let's see, Koa Pete, Arizona, even since high school. So he played his last month of his high school season through the playoffs to win his fourth state championship with a broken right hand. So his dominant hand, his shooting hand, he played with a broken right hand all the way through the playoffs, wins another state championship. But he comes out here and he's added some athletic pop to his frame, some explosion. He was ferocious around the basket. Already having won 3 gold medals, will be interesting to see, how his career continues to develop. Morez Johnson was a step ahead of the rest of the fives that were in the conversation. His physicality, his switchability on defense, his ability around the rim, protecting the paint. And then I'd say Nick Kamenia. It wasn't flashy with him. The stats weren't great with him. But he was steadily around the play. He was always connecting the pieces. And whenever he was asked upon, Nick Kamenia going to Duke next year, he was able to step up and make a play, whether it be the assist, whether it be the pass that led to the assist, whether it be knocking down a three-point shot, providing spacing. But those 5 throughout the week were probably the 5 most consistent. I think AJ was at a tier of his own. I think you have Michael, Koa, and Morez. That was the next 3 in the tier. And then Nick Kamenia was kind of in a tier below those other 3. So those were consistently the thing. And AJ was, to reiterate, AJ was great.
Of the 32 there, where do Malachi and Jasper stack up? Were they top of the top, and obviously not top 5, but where in the pecking order do you think they belong?
I think Jasper was probably a top 10 performer. Possibly he's somewhere in that 5 to 10 range throughout the week. Malachi, right around that 10, probably that 9 to 14 range for him. He was good. The treatment that he was having to receive toward the end there, I guess made the decision to not go forward with the team or whatnot. I hated to see that because he was playing at a really high level.
Yeah, it sucked, and he got emotional a little bit when he was leaving. I think just kind of saw it as a missed opportunity because he was playing unbelievably well, and kind of one of those what if kind of deals. But he's back in Lexington, and getting to rejoin the team. Jasper is not. It's my understanding the plan initially, Jamie, was for Jasper to kind of check a box, show up, compete, show that he belongs. And then before we got to the final 12, maybe withdraw and return to Lexington with everybody else and compete in those summer workouts. But I think when he thrived early on and, he got the voice of approval from Mark Pope to say, hey, go pursue this, go win a gold medal. I think it kind of changed his mindset as the week went on. And I think we kind of saw it turn on a little bit where it kind of looked like he was maybe just there to check a box initially, and then by the end I thought he was playing really, really well, especially today, going back to yesterday as well. So
I got to tell you, Jack, it really felt like winning a gold medal for USA meant something to every one of those kids in that gym. I couldn't imagine any one of those kids withdrawing themselves from going on this opportunity just with the way that they were competing. I mean, it was just an all-out competition. I had an NBA scout that was sitting there beside me saying this might have been the most competitive scrimmages they've seen at USA basketball over the past however many years. It was. I just couldn't imagine putting all of that out there and somebody withdrawing. But it was the competitive nature of what was going on was just awesome to just watch.
Yeah, AJ is the perfect example. The dude makes as much money as he could ever dream of with NIL. He's the number one recruit. He's going to be the number one draft pick next cycle. And he's picking up 94 feet and, screaming out defensive assignments and counting down the, inbounds clock for, hoping that the refs will call a violation. Like, obsessing over winning these, what amounts to meaningless games. Like, the games
Yeah.
don't mean anything to little individual scrimmages, but that dude was obsessed with winning, and you got that feel with a lot of those guys. Brandon McCoy today kind of had that. I want to do whatever it takes to win this game. So it really was just an unbelievably cool experience to be a part of. I'd never been a part of it. You've been several times, so it's kind of the newness and the freshness of it for me. Man, what a fun time! What an
it never gets old,
experience.
man. I go through the same thing every single time that you're going through now. It's super exciting to see. And always, too, when your best players, your most competitive, your best players, you're the one that he kind of sets the tone from the top, and it kind of bleeds down. If you have AJ Advanced over here diving on the floor for loose balls and jumping into passing lanes and trying to create havoc and being loud and calling out defensive assignments, well, you better believe that these other guys are going to do it too, and they were. Everybody was vocal, most loud I've heard most of these guys talk or be. It was just an unbelievable experience. I'm sure for the kids too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jamie, this was a lot of fun. I know you got to catch your flight. I got to catch my flight. I'll talk a couple more minutes after we get you off. But, man, it was an absolute joy. You're great at what you do. And I did just have a lot of fun picking your brain and just kind of bouncing ideas off one another. And, it felt like a very special event. I was very, very grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah, I was glad you're able to make it out. Glad you're able to experience it. And I was thoroughly impressed with your work ethic, man. You're out there getting it going, getting content. Every second you're able to be doing some sort of content, you're doing it. So it was a great time. Great time.
Well, safe travels to you back home. Let me know when you make it, and make sure tell fans where they can find your work.
Yeah, on3.com. Jamie Shaw at Jamie Shaw 5 on X, and then Jamie_Shaw 5 on Instagram. But www.on3.com. Go to it, subscribe to it, get all the information. You get all the breaking news from Joe Tipton. You get KSR. And we're about to jump on with Rivals too. And subscription gets you all the way through the network. So it's a great time to be a part of On3.
Sure is. Well, Jamie, we appreciate you, and we'll catch up with you next time.
Jack, I appreciate it.
Great stuff there from Jamie Shaw. Really appreciated that. We had a lot of fun here out in Colorado Springs. Obviously, we talked a ton. Don't need to, dig too much deeper. But, on the individual talent, he did a great job of, breaking down Jasper, Malachi, and all the other Kentucky targets. But my biggest takeaway that I really wanted to drive home was watching Mark Pope in this element and in his system, making his coaching debut with USA Basketball in, a once in a kind, and it's not a lifetime because the goal is for him to return and kind of keep this going annually, but for the first of his lifetime to step in wearing USA across his chest for the first time and just mingle with every single person and really just kind of take ownership of this opportunity. Obviously the head spotlight was on Jasper and Malachi and his opportunity to coach them for the first time, but man, how he was just in his element, bouncing from kid to kid to kid, especially the ones that he's recruiting. There's such a question, so much to be said about is can Mark Pope land the big fish? Can he be a shark on the recruiting trail? What does that look like for him to, land these types of talents? And for him to be in a gym full of them and so comfortably talk to each of them and throw his arm around Tyron Stokes and then go pull Tay Kenny to the side and have an in-depth one-on-one conversation. Like that dude is a shark. He has some real recruiting stuff to him that if there was ever any concern about whether or not he had the ability to land these kids and, how he would be able to adjust, trading out a BYU logo for a Kentucky logo, and if he could recruit at a Kentucky level, I think this event just totally changed the game for him individually and the confidence that he has in the recruiting trail, and the guys that he'll be able to get. I do think, talking as we talked about the guys Kentucky has a real shot with. I do think Kentucky has a real shot with Tyron Stokes. I think that they are firmly in the mix there, and I think it's going to be one of those Kentucky versus Louisville head-to-head battles for the number one kid in the country, and I think that's going to be a really, really fun, kind of just dynamic to watch, a head-to-head of Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey, and we're going to get the same thing with Tay Kenny. And Tay Kenny is one of those kids. Tyron's from Louisville, but he hasn't been in the state for 7-8 years. Like, he's been out in California, and he's been raised in California and outside of Kentucky, but man, he was born, and some of those early foundational days, developmental days of his life were spent in Louisville. But Tay Kenny is Kentucky through and through, is Malachi or Jasper or Reed or Trent Noah or any of these guys. So that's going to be a really interesting dynamic to see if Mark Pope can pull off not one but two head-to-head battles against Louisville and Pat Kelsey. And obviously the Adidas dynamic with Tay Kenny is definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. I know Adidas is very invested in keeping him home, and Louisville's very invested in keeping him with a Adidas sponsored school and keeping him as a Cardinal. So that's going to be a really fun thing. He just scheduled an official visit to Lexington here next week, so that's definitely going to be one to keep an eye on. Just going through some of the other guys in terms of recruiting buzz. Next to nothing with Taj Ariza in terms of Kentucky ramping up. He just kind of has a West Coast vibe and just feels like that's where he's going to end up. I didn't hear anything at camp this weekend to suggest like, oh, that's a kid that they're really ramping up on. Christian Collins, I think Kentucky, Mark Pope really did his due diligence and was really digging deeper with him. Teaching him and coaching him up and pulling him aside. He was, of all of the uncommitted prospects, I'd probably say he was the one that spent the most one-on-one time, Mark Pope, with Christian Collins. So that's definitely a name that I'm monitoring. I haven't heard a ton to suggest there's real traction, as Jamie said. I think they're still in the kind of development stage of figuring out, getting the lay of the land of who they're really gaining traction with. But I really thought that Christian Collins was the one that, kind of stood out to me how much time Mark Pope was spending with him. Jason Crow, basically, godson of Jason Hart. So I think he's kind of one of those guys that if Kentucky wants him with Jason Hart on staff, they'll be able to get him. Now it's about evaluating, the talent. Is he good enough? Is he a guy that, is trending in the right direction, his trajectory going up to a Kentucky caliber? I think that's something that Kentucky right now is kind of, evaluating internally. They love the kid, but just kind of want to make sure that he's continuing to elevate up. Talking to scouts, talking to some other, media folk and NBA, guys, there's, kind of wondering what happened with Jason and why, just he kind of plateaued a little bit. He's, leading scorer in EYBL, but how he's getting those points, I think, is something that there's just, not totally bought out on him, but just wondering where this thing is going with him. So that's one I'm keeping an eye on. Caleb Holt, I think Kentucky likes him. I think he likes Kentucky. Don't think that, I would put him in the top tier of serious targets who Kentucky is, trending for, but definitely in the conversation. Tay Kenny, as I said, I think they're there. Brandon McCoy, interesting kid, didn't have the best camp, got hurt a little bit, kind of banged up his knee. Played kind of with a desperation, but he, got hurt the last year and hasn't played AAU this cycle, withdrew from that. So a lot of coaches are just kind of wondering what's going on with him, and really some schools falling off with him entirely. So I think he's, his recruitment has been so quiet, and I think we just might see a total hard reset with him in terms of who's being prioritized, who's prioritizing him, who's a legitimate target. I don't know if Kentucky is in the mix there. I think they like him, but kind of playing that wait and see game with him. It's still a lot of questions. Darren Rippey, he's trending in the right direction. The other guys are kind of, either falling off or plateaued a little bit. Rippey is going absolutely balls to the wall in the right direction, and Kentucky just offered last week. This was a really cool opportunity to see last week getting a scholarship offer from Kentucky, and then seeing Mark Pope coach him and, having Cody Feger there and Mark Fox there evaluating him as well. So, definitely a name to keep an eye on as things ramp up with Kentucky. He told me that he does plan on taking an official visit to Lexington, so that's definitely a name to watch. Jordan Smith Jr., a lot of Duke buzz. I think Kentucky obviously loves him. He's a heck of a talent, but just not seeing a whole lot of traction there with Kentucky, so I wouldn't, be too invested in that recruitment. And then obviously Tyron Stokes, I think Kentucky's 1A, 1B right there with Louisville. But just a little quick recruiting breakdown. But I just couldn't be more impressed with, Mark Pope and how he handled himself and used this opportunity. It's funny seeing a guy who sells the Kentucky brand and what it means to wear Kentucky across his chest. And every conversation he has with a kid is about that. Now he kind of put the shoe on the other foot for a change where he had to wear USA across his chest, and it was the learning experience for him about learning what it means to be a USA coach and coach USA players. And I just thought he did a really bang up job of this opportunity, and I think it's going to show on the recruiting trail sooner rather than later. So incredible weekend, ton of talent. Over the moon about Jasper and Malachi. I think they both played extremely well. I think, I agreed with Jamie. I think they were both top 10 players in the event. Jamie was a little bit lower on Malachi. I was a little bit higher on Malachi in how he performed, but I think they were both surefire top 10, players in this event. Hated how good Michael Brown was. Unfortunately, I think Louisville got a really, really, really good talent. I think he's going to be a top 10 draft pick. I talked to him a little bit afterward about, just the Louisville dynamic and how the rivalry, what it means to him, and if he's kind of got caught up in that, and he has, and he's said, I'm November 11th, I'm counting down the days. So definitely going to be a fun kid to root against. Great kid, but a talent that's like, man, we got to do whatever it takes to stop that kid. So I think it's going to be interesting watching him this season, because I do think that Louisville's going to have a lot of media eyes and attention on them, because Michael Brown is going to be a lottery pick next cycle, and Kentucky fans certainly will not love hearing that, but unfortunately that's just the reality of the situation. So a lot of fun in Colorado Springs. Appreciate everybody following along with the coverage, and we'll plenty more to come. I have content through like 2028 after how much we got. So definitely had a lot of fun. Appreciate the opportunity and everybody following along. So with that, let's jump into my interviews. I got one-on-ones with, first we'll start with Grant McCaslin with Texas Tech, and then followed by Notre Dame's Micah Shrewsbury, and we will see you on the other side. Go Cats. Coach, what have you seen from, we'll start with Jasper this week to solidify his status here as a top 18?
Yeah, his experience of playing on the U18 team, I think, showed, especially early. And, when he played with us originally, he really was hunting shots and was more kind of a straight two guard. And what I've really been impressed with is, one, he's always been coachable, but he's increased his ability to learn and grow and willingness to hear everything you have to say and try to do it. And defensively, he's competing, but offensively, his composure level, his ability to make the next play, and his ownership and winning has really been tremendous. I mean, he's gotten better, and I don't mean just a little bit. I think Jasper, he's always been a shot maker and an elite scorer, but I think his composure level offensively has really grown, and I've been really impressed with him.
What do you think Kentucky is getting in him? Your expectations for year one at Kentucky?
Yeah, well, I played against Coach Pope's teams when he was at BYU, and their pace and their flow, and they got guys that can make shots and break games open. And I just think his ability to score and shoot and get fouled in that system is going to be extremely hard to guard. And it feels like the more he plays, the better he gets, and they compete and get up and down enough that those possessions will really highlight who he is as a player.
And same question for Malachi. Just what have you seen from him this week?
Yeah, Malachi's gotten better. I mean, I think his activity around the rim has always been good, but I think his composure level with the ball has improved. I mean, he kind of took the easy way out the first time I worked with him. This time I thought he was putting his nose in the middle of it more often, and I love where he's at. I mean, his shot blocking at the rim and his ability to finish has gotten better, his hands and rebounding, and just the activity level he's playing with, he's grown. So I mean, both those guys have made huge jumps, in my opinion, from the last year when we worked with him.
And same thing, his freshman year at Kentucky. What do you think Kentucky's getting in Malachi?
Yeah, I mean, he's such a great teammate. And I think every day you show up with a guy like Malachi, everybody's going to love playing with him. And that to me is how you grow a team and win, is you get guys that like everybody wants to be around every day. He's just got an infectious personality. He's genuine in who he is as a person, and and his activity level defensively always can keep him on the floor. And his best days are ahead of him in regards to his offense and skill. He made a 3 in our scrimmages. I mean, he's just getting more confident with playing on the perimeter, but it's always going to earn his keep rebounding, defending, being a great elite player around the basket, and being a guy that plays with a ton of energy.
What's it been like to let's start with Jasper. What have you seen from him and just kind of the growth over this week, but also just your time with him with USA Basketball?
Yeah, I thought from having him last year and then going into this year, he made a huge jump, especially in the trials. Even though he made the team last year, I thought his play this year really picked up. He was aggressive, making shots, aggressive attacking the rim. I thought he made really good plays as a passer as well, which was really good to see kind of the growth in his game keep going up.
In terms of just kind of year one expectation, what do you think Kentucky is getting out of Jasper as a freshman?
Yeah, I know how Coach Pope loves those guys that can make shots. So him being able to shoot it in, shoot it from deep, shoot it off the dribble, with a lot of guys that can attack off the bounce around him as well. So he's going to compete. He's going to play hard. He's going to be able to make shots. He's going to be a good player.
Malachi, same question. What have you seen from him and his growth over the week especially?
Yeah, I thought he played really well. Was very active around the basket with his rebounding, with his post-ups, blocking shots. Like, that's an area where I think he's really grown in his game. He's always been skilled where he stepped out and made shots. He's a good passer, right, which is something that I know Kentucky, Mark Pope loves to do with those bigs. So he'll fit in with those guys because of that skill level that he has. But if he keeps adding that presence around the rim like that, it's going to be a really good player for him.
Do you think he can be an instant impact kind of guy, somebody that you could expect to contribute from day one?
Yeah, I think so. Playing in these environments, right, is something that gets you prepared a little bit more, right? It's not college, but it's about as close as you can get to college coming to this, where all these guys are going to be high major guys, really good players. So getting this experience should give you some confidence going back to campus, now preparing for the rest of the summer.
Attention in the terminal, Southwest Airlines will begin boarding delayed Denver flight 1684 in about 5 minutes at gate number 12. If you are on delayed flight 1684 going to Denver, please report back to gate number 12 for boarding.
Just in case you were wondering about when boarding starts for those guys. Appreciate both those coaches coming on with us and breaking down Jasper and Malachi and everything that they do well. That was really cool stuff, and definitely excited for what fans, what we should be expecting from both of those guys, the in-state guys, in their freshman seasons at Kentucky. But before we wrap up, just a reminder, Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money and 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations, special events, meet and greets with UK athletes, signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubbluenil.com. You need to pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue. And Optimal Living Services partners with clients to increase their awareness of issues and empowers them to develop the skills to manage these challenges. We believe that every individual has obstacles they will need to face, and that the challenges our team provides will give hope to all of our clients. Every individual has the ability to grow from their problems, whether it's substance abuse, mental health, work, finance, or emotional struggles. We help clients learn from their potential and join them in their journey. You can head to optimallivingservices.com to learn more about their services and meet their staff. You can also give them a call, 859-785-1030. For Jack Pilgrim, again, appreciate everybody following along from our work with in Colorado Springs, the USA Training Camp, an absolute blast. Thank you to Jamie Shaw for coming on with us, and obviously thanks to Coach Graham McCaslin and Coach Micah Shrewsbury for joining us, and we will see you next time. Go Cats.